Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming today. My name is Chris Rabold. I am a front of house engineer. Some of you guys might know me from some of my work. I mix acts like Bruno Mars, Lady Gaga, Beyonce, Kenny Chesney, Justin Bieber, Nora Jones, Florence and the Machine. You get the idea. I've been fortunate enough to jump around genre to genre, and it's been a great ride. And throughout that ride, there have been products from these two gentlemen that are here with me today at every step of the way, which is pretty incredible. And these two gentlemen are Dr. Christian Heil from L-Acoustics, and we have Mr. Jerry Harvey from JH Audio. So guys, thanks for making the time to be with us here today.
Very welcome.
You know, Jerry, it reminds me a little bit the first time we met, actually.
Yeah.
We were both a little bit impressed.
Oh, I think I was way more impressed than you were.
Well, because you had the jet lag, and because you had a long journey with with flights, everything. Me, I was in my comfort zone at that moment, you know.
I'll be honest, I was very intimidated to meet you. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, because of all the things that you had accomplished, I had built you up like this superhuman, right? And then when I met you and you were like this cool, casual, laid back guy, it was like you were totally different than what I thought you were going to be because I'd never met you before.
Well, the same for you, Jerry. The same for you, because I'd been told so many things about you, so that I didn't know who to expect. I was actually thinking you were this self-confident, big American guy, you know, and not at all actually. So being intimidated was good actually, because actually I'm always a little bit intimidated as well, and I'm also kind of reserved. So that was good. Actually, I was positively surprised. Actually, to
Yeah,
be
it was a
honest.
great meeting. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So before we get going too far, and obviously everyone wants to know what you all have to say, but allow me to take a moment. You know, this couldn't have been set up any better. I was thinking to myself when they approached me to sort of moderate this discussion, I started thinking there's so many wonderful things about this. If you were to ask me, if you said, Chris, I need you to amass, let's say the top 5 innovators in all of live audio for the past 2-3 decades, you guys are on that list, no doubt about it. And that's a very convenient rhetoric for me to have for this interview of sorts, but it's the honest to God truth. And then as time has gone on, I started thinking, you know, if you asked me to amass the top 3 audio innovators in our industry, you guys would be on that list. And you see where I'm going with this. I truly, truly, truly mean that. And I know that's kind of a lot to hear and a lot to take in, but it's the truth. For anyone that is a student of the game, that's a fan of our industry, you know, what you guys have brought to our world. And again, in terms of innovation, neither one of you invented the loudspeaker, clearly, but in terms of innovation, where you have taken it, it's unparalleled. And I can tell you, you know, again, the irony of this whole collaboration here and the fact that I'm lucky enough to be here, it's just not lost on me. When I was an up and coming engineer in the 90s, Christian, when your product was rolled out, you know, I was the guy that before I even heard it, I made my way to the internet, what was there, and I was downloading every white paper I could find, every review, it was obvious to me what a game changer this thing was. And it was also obvious from the sorts of people that were talking about it, just how significant it was. And I just only recently threw out all these stacks of paper I had of early VDOS stuff, you know, and then I would eventually make my way to the product, be able to spec it myself and use it myself. And it was everything that I thought it was going to be. And, you know, look at the industry now with regards to, you know, line array speakers as a whole. Mr. Harvey, your turn. You know, I certainly, you know, in-ear monitors, when they came around, it was a groundbreaking thing, an earth-shattering thing. It changed the scope of how concerts were done and how performers monitored. And I followed all the brands and I followed everything coming up. And then what you were doing with Ultimate Ears was clearly the next step. And to watch, again, the innovation where you would take this stuff was just, it was just so clear what was happening in the moment, that it was a moment, that we were heading somewhere next step, and that you two in your respective field were kind of shepherding us along. And then to watch it grow and you know, turn into JH and where it is now. And of course, our relationship, we were joking before this, how you and I got to know one another when you were my, my audio rep for a brief moment there. It's just phenomenal. So anyway, I'm gonna kind of ease back a moment and take the brakes off of the fanboyness that I have for this moment. But this collaboration is quite significant, and I would think it's not lost on anyone. It just how amazing this is. So so yeah, so I had to start with some of that, guys. Now that being said, I think ultimately what people are going to want to hear about is sort of what was the genesis of how did this relationship between the two companies come to be, but we would be remiss not to go back and have a little bit of an origin story respectively on your two companies. So if it's possible to do that, to summarize that in what is probably quite a lengthy conversation, maybe Christian, maybe if you want to go first, just tell us a little bit about how L-Acoustics came to be.
Yes, thank you very much, Chris. It's a very let's say intimidating introduction to
It wasn't meant to be, and I promise it's all real. That I just came up with the actual words on the spot. I only had the premise.
Okay. Anyway, I will try to remain on Earth and not elevate it. So let's be on Earth. When it started, I started the company L-Acoustics in 1984, coming from a completely different world, because I was meant, or I was supposed to become a scientist in physics of elementary particles. Uh, but very quickly after my PhD, I realized that I would never be, uh, like you just said, a star in the physics. There were people very smart in this field, and I think this was far too challenging for me to do that. And but I found another route, and I met with people who were like you, mixing engineers, and I had no idea what it meant at that time. It was in the early 80s, and I had no information, no clue of what was the sound in the live industry. But progressively, I met with these people. I made friends with them, and I wanted to be there. I wanted to be inside that because I was fascinated by what the people do in this industry, not only because they are, it's a very high technical side, but that was more the side, the pleasure, the entertainment that you produce every time you make a show. You provide happiness to people, and that was one of the things that I found very special. So what did I do? I used my background. I used what I knew, which was physics, and I tried to to convey this physics into a field of live sound. And at that time in the 80s, you can remember that the sound for audio was still very, I would say, primitive,
Mm-hmm.
or not very technical.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to think about how could I contribute to that. And the first thing that came to my mind is when I was seeing these big walls of sound systems in concerts. I was Yes, I was really impressed by those walls, but I was scratching my head. I said, how can it work? And I was wondering why uh, uh, engineers or companies or manufacturers were assembling speakers that way. And because everyone knows that speakers, when they work together, they create interference. And I decided to address this question and try to find a way to eliminate negative interference and only take out the positive part of it. And basically, uh, I started to design things as um, um, to provide the combination of speakers to work like a single loudspeaker, like a laser in the optic industry. So this is what I did, and that was just a simple observation, and here we go. So that was my contribution to this industry as a start.
Hmm. And it's interesting to hear you describe that because it's one of those things where oftentimes in any industry, the bar is set where the bar is set. And there's almost this unspoken rule that, hey, that's what we're shooting for. Let's all just collectively try not to go too far above and too far below, and we'll all be okay. And there's a good deal of bravery that comes along with the notion of yours, which was just, hey, this is great, but this could be better, which is what I'm hearing.
And you're right to say bravery or naivety.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. There's
Because
something beautiful about both.
exactly, because I think I think at the beginning when I brought these ideas on the table and shared these ideas with people, I was actually anxious because I said that solution, what I'm bringing here is so obvious.
Hmm.
Why would I be the person who bring that to this industry? Whereas lots of people have been working in this industry, but they have been blind to that. So I did not understand the reason why. And the reason is very simple. It's just I was coming with fresh ideas from another world, and
Hmm.
I was basically the intruder in this industry, bringing just fresh ideas, and that was simple.
Hmm.
And and that is and what is good in our industries is the mix of people, the mix of different minds coming with spectacular new ideas, which are most of the time simple, but nobody had thought about it before.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and that's the beauty of oftentimes, ideas coming from, whether it's from, youthful exuberance and just not knowing that you're not supposed to speak up about these obvious things, or in your case, someone who's just far enough left of center that, you just felt comfortable coming in and saying them. A lot of time it's the people that are entrenched in the middle. They're just afraid to rock the boat. And again, I think that speaks to, for both of you guys, again, I keep going back to innovation. And I think that's clearly what you guys have brought to the table in spades is innovation. So with that being said, Jerry, how do you even begin to paraphrase your journey?
Well, it's kind of lackluster after that one, but I will say that I remember just on the VDOS side, I remember working for A1 Audio, and the first time we flew the VDOS, Jeff Cox and Bernie kind of taught me how to measure the room, and so I was a systems engineer at that time. I remember turning it up, and it was just so clear. I was like, "Wow,
Hmm.
this is different." I mean, you know, the fanboy in me is like Christian changed the way that people will build PAs for the rest of the forever. So there's a couple people, and my hats off to him. He's made a huge change in this industry for sure. But as far as myself, I was just a monitor guy, systems guy, and I was doing wedges and side fills, making them as loud as I could for all the rock bands, and then I started working for Engelbert Humperdinck for off and on between Van Halen tours, and Marty Garcia, obviously, and radio station came out with in-ear monitors. So we got a set of in-ears for Engelbert. They were the Future Sonics, and I mixed maybe 3 or 4 shows for him, and he went on a break. Then I was hired by Van Halen because in-ears were in their infancy then, and because I had actually mixed a few shows, it made me an expert, which is kind of funny, right?
Right.
But so I show up at rehearsals, and Alex, I give him a set of Future Sonics and also Sensophonics, and I'm brand new to the camp, so I have no credibility at all. We do the first, verse of sound check, and he shuts it down and says, "These things sound horrible. What else you got?" So he kind of lays them on his floor tom. Then we put the other set in, and he's like, "These are just as bad as those. Do you not? Is this your mixing skills, or is this actually the product?" And I never blame my product. I was like, "Well, it's in its infancy," and excuse me. And then Alex said, well, why don't you see if you can find something that sounds better, because I can't do a show with those. And that kind of sent me down the path. I wasn't even looking to design in-ears or, have a company or any of the things that have come out of this. It was just a need to make my artist happy. And after about 6 months, I finally came up with something. And I believe I looked up at a VDOS PA system. I was like, I need more than one component in this, obviously, because we've been doing this in PAs. So it wasn't really rocket science. It was just applying large scale PA system stuff to just a little micro speakers, right?
Hmm. Well, and I'm realizing something here as you're talking, just as where Christian, you didn't really come into this at all as a loudspeaker designer, manufacturer, enthusiast, anything other than someone with a physics background, a science background, and a music lover. And I guess Jerry, and because you and I have never talked about this, and I have often wondered this about you because you're such like the mixer guy. You know what I mean? Like I think of you as a mixer. I don't think of you as the nerdy scientist developer guy, yet that is wholly what you are. Did you have any sort of background in design or electronics or tinkering, or is it just a matter of you just had to figure this out and you just did it?
Well, I came up through the apprentice, ranks basically. I remember learning how to mix sound in the clubs,
Hmm.
and every time you would walk into a club, the PA system would be broken.
What?
So
Correct. Yeah.
you know this, right? You learned about how
Yes.
a crossover works, where the
Absolutely.
horn should be crossed over, the sub should be crossed over.
Hmm.
And so that was just basic audio 101 that I learned. And there was a gentleman named Dave Lawler that
Hmm.
actually taught me a lot. He was using the sim back then, the Myers sim,
Sure.
right before Smart came out. And he taught me a lot about sound theory, how horns interact, all the things that Christian was saying, right? Reflections off of walls, how it comes back in and causes a comb filter, how, everything has to be in time, how to do side contours and things like that. So I was doing monitors for Van Halen, but I was also, and this is after I started doing inner monitors. So I went out and I would sit with him while he was tuning the PA, and he taught me sound theory basically, and I owe a lot to Dave. And then I started applying that to the in-ears, like time aligning the components so they're in phase
Hmm.
and finding the right components. So I was very lucky. I'm not a, I don't have a PhD, but I feel like I have at least a master's in audio from 25 years of being on the road.
Sure.
And
Sure.
thank you for thinking I'm a mixer. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Right. you know, uh,
If you
Go
don't
ahead,
mind,
Christian.
if you don't mind, I'd like just to say one thing also. I've never been only just a scientist, and it's not like a pure science guy.
Hmm.
When I was 16, I was dreaming of sound.
Hmm.
I was I was already putting loudspeaker in a box, and I was trying to make this system for my stereo, my at-home stereo. That was so I was already passionate by music, but I didn't find a way to get into that sector because I had no idea where this sector was living. Actually, to be honest,
Hmm.
that's just what I want to say.
Yeah, no, that's great though. And again, though, I think I don't know about you guys, but the people that resonate with me most often, particularly in this industry, it's usually people that have stories like this, like both of yours, where we just kind of ultimately what's at the core of it is like this just passion and interest. I mean, I'll tell you right now, sitting here, I stumbled how to introduce myself into these things when I do these sorts of things because there's still a pinch me aspect to it all that I was just a kid too, that I would go see concerts. The situation for me, I would go to concerts and my whole thing was always, why does it sound like it, why does it sound this way? Of course, now with years under my belt, whoever was mixing in those horrible environments deserved all the credit in the world, but I was just such a novice, and music meant so much to me, but I just always wanted to know why it was doing what it was doing. Could it be better? Could it be this? Could it be that? There was no formal introduction like this studio I'm sitting here now. There was none of this in my background. My story doesn't involve me growing up at a studio at 10 years of age and this and that. And I mean, I found my way into clubs, into bars, into all of these sorts of things just because I really cared and I really wanted to make it better. And I hear that in both of you guys. And all of this though is just like such a perfect segue into how this even came to be, like how we're even talking, how this uh relationship of sorts came about because, you know, I mentioned that early on when they asked me to come in here and speak to you guys. There's all these wonderful things going through my head, and again, at the top of those is that, you know, you guys are at the top of your field. You're at the top of your field when it comes to innovation and also production. Like, not just theory. We're not just talking literally what people think, what they hear. But you guys couldn't be on two more polar opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, as you said, you know, we were talking, I don't have my ears on me now. We were talking about these tiny little things that are quite literally in someone's ear versus these loudspeaker array systems, which I realize could be a small near field Christian of your design. But for someone like myself, when I'm thinking of L-Acoustics, I'm thinking of a stadium with 60,000 people. And that's what's so crazy. You know, there's this, you guys are doing, we're still talking about transduction here. We're still talking about loudspeakers, but they're not at all the same, you know, not at all. So with that being said, how did this come to be, and what was the goal, and what is the realistic goal? I think that's a fair question too, because there's, you know, these are products that are so drastically different. Yeah, speak to that. How did this come to be, and how'd we do?
I was at the NAMM show last January and attended the Pernelli Awards, and I sat with David Brooks, and we were talking a little bit, and he asked me if I would come and meet with Laurent. They wanted to have a meeting the following day, and so I went in and I spoke to Laurent, and they were saying that they were interested in this technology and how it works, and maybe doing something going forward to have a complete package from the loudspeakers to the wedges to the in-ears. Since in-ears had kind of taken over the stage, you know, you got to realize in 95 when we started this, wedges were still predominant until maybe 5 years ago, because we're talking the third generation of musicians who now just go, oh, we're going out on tour, I need my ears, right? It's totally different than when we started this. So then I went over and I met with Christian, and that's kind of how my side of it happened. You know, I was very, like I said, intimidated and wild that I was going to go meet Christian over in Paris, right? So it was like a huge highlight for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's good. That's good, Jerry, that you mentioned David, because David is, David Brooks, who works for L-Acoustics now for, well, been working for more than 10 years, I guess. And he is an ex-monitor engineer. So I understand the reason why he wanted to combine and these sound systems and these in-ear monitors, and the reason why he has been interested to us to meet actually and to have a conversation. Uh, on my side, on the acoustic side, at the beginning, I thought, uh, I think it was interesting. It was interesting to have this conversation with you, Jerry, without having me in my side any goal in mind, because I was not sure of what would be this combination together. I was not sure of. I could see the added value. I could see that. I mean, you have the king of the stage who can meet the kings of the audience of the other side. It sounds like a great story, but what we will be talking about? So that was the first thing that I was not sure about. And what was interesting is that Laurent also had something in mind. Laurent is the CEO of L-Acoustics and he had something in mind. He said, well, that would be great that you meet together and see how you like each other and see if there's would be a combination, an extension to make the sound to offer our client, customers, artists, or audience the same sonic performance from the beginning, from the ears directly up to the sound systems. And And I found that quite interesting. I said, well, that's a challenge. That's an interesting challenge. I don't know how we will proceed because I didn't know how open was Jerry about that. Uh, on my side, I'm very French, so I was not very open at all. Uh, I could see a lot of challenges. I could see a lot of, uh, let's say, difficulties to deal to work from a remote location. It was maybe difficult to communicate, and that's all. But very, very nicely, very kindly, Jerry made the effort to come and visit us in Marcoussis, France, and we had this first very, very warm meeting at the first place. And from that meeting, I guess we were almost, we made the decision actually almost during this meeting or a few weeks later. We just said, because all the people of my team were pushing for that to happen. They said, well, that would be great to have a headphone or in-ear monitor, to have something that an engineer, that an artist, that a simple person could wear, in and take the sonic, let's say the L-Acoustics sonic, the sound of L-Acoustics with him all the time. And I said, well, that's very exciting. That's a very interesting idea. So let's do it. Let's do it. And we made a bet, and and you see what happened. I mean, we just did it.
That's pretty incredible. The fact that you did this too, I guess, just began. So that would have, we're just like what, a year and
No,
some,
not even a year.
that's incredible.
When did you come, Jerry? That was just before pandemic, actually.
It was,
That was
Oh, so it's this year.
yeah, I think the first week of March, if I remember correctly, right before everything shut down.
Incredible.
yeah, just before shutdown. So it was incredible. And at that time we said, well, we could do that. We could do this. Let's discuss about that. But again, Laurent and David have been very active to maintain that, especially when COVID, when pandemic happens, and
Yeah.
where we all uh, our attention, we are all how do you say that, distracted by this
Yes.
pandemic. Uh, but then we said, well, you know what? We have nothing to do, so
Yes.
let's do something interesting.
I was going to say this might be the most perfect time for this, particularly a remote collaboration
Yeah.
to come about.
For me, it was, and it also took my mind off of, the catastrophe that was happening in our industry. And,
Hmm.
in my building, the people that I had to lay off, and all my friends were suffering, all my engineer friends and our production friends. So for me, it was very nice. I came in every day and I worked on this, because in a normal environment, I would have only had a couple hours here and there to work on it, but I had nothing but time. So I worked, you know, like my full-time job was working with Christophe and Laurent to
Hmm.
get this thing to get the contour to be as close to the um, audio signature or contour of an L-acoustic speaker as possible.
Hmm.
Jerry, I must say that I've been impressed how fast this project has evolved, with a very active contribution and enthusiasm from both sides. You said Christophe Combet, who is the director of R&D at L-Acoustics, and you and your team have been very, very involved in the project. And you're right to say that probably in normal times it would have taken 2 years to achieve the same goal.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating. And I can tell you guys, I guess I caught wind of this thing. Again, this is all news to me. I didn't realize just how, quickly it came about, but it was sometime in the middle of the year when it got on my radar, that you guys were doing this. And my first thought, honestly, my first thought was just kind of one of like, whoa, again, it's this, because we're just coming from different ends of the spectrum. Then again, go back to the fan of the industry. I see this sort of Superman and Batman collaboration in the works here, and I couldn't help but be, at first I was like, whoa, Then I was like, why? Then I was like, wow. And then it got into like, okay, no, I need to see this happen, you know? And we're seeing it now. And I'll tell you guys, as an end user of both products, and this is the honest to God truth. For example, if I'm starting up a tour with someone, that tour up for the acts that I'm fortunate enough to work with these days, it oftentimes starts in a scenario like this. And we're building towards it's the promo time where we're getting ready to go TV and the award shows and all of this. And for instance, with Bruno Mars, we will carry everywhere except the Grammys, we will carry our own gear into those things, meaning we take our mix there. And the evolution of that is it starts just like this, not necessarily on those reference monitors that are behind me, but on a pair of reference monitors. I mix on those for months on end. It's produced with the artist. Then and it's vetted in every way possible, not just how it sounds in here. We're listening. It's the modern era. We're listening on phones. We're listening on laptops. On rare occasion, will we go out and do a show during this time? For the most part, it's done just like you would do the studio experience. When we get to the actual broadcast day of, I can tell you that when I first started doing this, it became readily apparent when I'm at these shows, I'm not in a control room. I mean, I'm shoved in a closet somewhere, wherever they can fit me. And these monitors mean nothing because there are cases and people and everything all around me. So I quickly had to figure out, I'm like, how do I approximate this listening experience? How do I get this in here where I can mix and make moves confidently? And I went through every headphone I could think of. I went through every in-ear I could think of. And in the end, for the past 5 years, Jerry, it's been your stuff. It's been, and it's kind of strange. I know I've used the JH, the 16s. I think it was the V1s. I just wouldn't let go of forever. I played with the Laylas for a while, and I got to be honest, having now listened to the contours, forget what it is, this magical collaboration between the two of you guys. That's my favorite sounding in-ear reference now. So what's going to happen is now I will put the contours will go in the ears for the TV shows. And then the further evolution of this, guys, and then you're seeing it happening right here, is going to be on a giant L-Acoustics PA when we're able to go do those things again. So, it's like it's laid out to work beautifully, but that just happens to be the way that I'm going to make use of this product. I see it having value in so many different ways. And among or above all else, guys, I just think it sounds phenomenal. You know, the biggest compliment I think I could pay either of you guys is that with both of your products, we talk about in the buzzwords or the sonic signature of, we want to get the sonic signature of the L-Acoustics and put it in the JH product, or we wanted this and that. To me, the things I love about your products the most is as a mixer, they're musical products. Like I honestly don't attribute a lot of character sound to them because the palette is so even and so smooth and so musical that nothing ever feels hyped. Everything always feels right where it should be. And that allows me to put into it what I want to with no fuss, no muss, and I'm not working around anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyway, that was just kind of a mouthful there of what I've experienced in the brief moments that I've had with the product and where I see it going. So just kudos, guys. The way it's worked out it's going to pay dividends for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways.
But Chris, I guess you just described in this in your talk the exact reason why we made the decision to go for it. Because effectively, most of the time you are in transit between in an airport, you are in a hotel room, you are working remotely from a sound system or from a studio monitor, and you need to have something, a tool that will remind you or that will help you to prepare your mix with something that is as close as possible from a live experience. And that's exactly what we had in mind, and that's great, and that's what have pushed us to make it. Now it is right to say that we are hoping now that we've started this collaboration with Jerry, that we can open also new segments or new interests from other people, And I'm thinking, for example, also for creative guys or engineers like you who want to prepare a mix in a multi-channel mix for our ELISA technology. It's becoming more and more complex than to have something that represent that will help you to mix or to prepare your mix in three dimensions. So we are thinking, obviously, with this in-ear monitors to bring also binaural solutions, so that you can mix and have a spatial interpretation or a special understanding of what you do. So that's a work in progress, and I think there's many things to do together in the future.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. Jerry, I have a question for you real quick now that we're sitting here talking about this with Christian and his very, specific vision of how he wanted to see this play out and some of his hopes and goals were. For you, when it came to tuning this product, for literally making it sound the way it sounds, did you have to do anything different, or was it just kind of, what was that process like?
It was very difficult because the thing about the L-Acoustics ear fields and PA systems, they all have a very coherent high frequency response.
You
I
nailed it.
mean, they go
Yeah.
way out there, right? Which is really,
In
I
a
mean, with
very
the,
musical way.
in a
That's what
musical
that's
way.
what sets it apart.
And it's
Right.
also, I mean, the high frequency horn that Christian's designed, I mean, it all plays into it, right? So it's very smooth and very pristine. And the problem inherently with an in-ear monitor and balanced armatures is that the high frequencies try to roll hard at 12K, right? Because a balanced armature, its impedance rises dramatically like a hockey stick after 10K. So you have to do a bunch of tricks to try to get that impedance to come down so the headphone amp will load and actually get some top end extension out of it. Well, naturally, most of my earpieces have a little bit of a, like kind of a, I kind of let it kind of roll off. Down. It's still, I have 16K there, but it's usually down about 5 or 6 dB. It's a little bit more, dramatic roll off. So when Christoph, sent me the curves that they wanted me to hit, I actually was like, great. Okay, let's see what I can do. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to do my best, right? So then I had to come up with some new tricks, and then also I had to contour the low frequencies steeper to match kind of the way that the low end and the sub bass, how L-Acoustics does. That's why we named it the contour, because I was trying to match our contour, right? And I was talking to Laurent. I was like, this thing should be named the contour. I've heard contour 1,000 times this week,
Right.
but so it was very difficult to get the headroom and dynamic range and actually get the top end extension that we did. And it took a lot of, I have some very talented 3D kids in here, right? The guys in the 3D lab, and it was the plumbing that we had to really work hard on to get that top end
I
extension.
bet.
We also lowered the impedance of the high frequency driver and used a totally different crossover than we ever did. But the top end extension, that's the L-Acoustic sweetness, is definitely done in the plumbing. And that was my guy, Andy Bailey, and I, staying here, till 10 o'clock constantly trying to get that thing done. And I remember telling Christoph, well, we'll have something by the end of the week. And then we would do the print, and the print would fail, or, it didn't do exactly what we wanted. I was like, I'm sorry, Christoph, it's going to be another week, because it was like a 48-hour turnaround. We'd look at the data, we design a new bore, and new tubes, and we'd put it into the printer, then we'd test it. But by that time that happened, like I said, it's a long turnaround. So it seemed like it was taking forever. But when you look back, just starting in April, I think we did it pretty quickly. But yeah, there was a serious challenge, and it was, like I said, I didn't know if I could pull it off or not. And when Christoph and Christian and everybody signed off on it, it was like, what a relief.
Jerry, I'm sorry to learn that you have suffered so much. Because on our side, we were not aware that you were suffering that much. but I must say that the outcome, I've been very, very pleased with the outcome. I I I, I, I could not believe what I was hearing the first time I received the second prototype. I was just I was almost in tears because I couldn't believe that what was happening. Uh, and Christophe on his side said, "Well, I can. These guys are capable of doing it. They are really hard worker. They are clever. I don't know what's the cooking recipe has been to achieve that. Apart from what I read on my spec sheet, which is using 4 drivers to do that. But actually, that's not a question of a number. That's a question of tuning, of calibration.
Yes.
That's a question of it's a micro surgery. Uh, but the end result, most of the time when I receive that, I don't start with any pop rock signal. I'm starting with I prefer Ravel symphonic
Hmm.
orchestra with Daphnis and Chloe, which is very complex. And I listened to that and I said, is it realistic? Is that natural? Does
Hmm.
that does it sound right to me? Uh, and that's the first thing I do. And then I play the piano, grand piano. I just do again the same listening procedure. And Christophe, when he was telling me what is the outcome, he knew already that I would love them. So yeah. I must say thank you very much, Jerry. Thank you very much. It's such a good such a good project in the worst conditions, in the conditions that were dramatic. So it was a moment of joy to do that.
Well, I'm glad. There were some long periods of waiting to see if you liked it or not because I was very intimidated. I was like, oh, if he doesn't sign off on this, where am I going to go now?
Where
Because I
where
thought
to
I had
go?
it pretty damn good. I was like, because everyone's like, well, we have to wait for Christian to sign off. I'm like, man. And then you'd come back and love it. I'm like, okay, great. I'd feel good. But I was like, if he thinks it sucks, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, and again, guys, this is so great for me to hear because everything you're both saying, these are the same observations and curiosities that I had when I heard about this product coming about. For instance, when I think of L-Acoustics, and the reason that I've always been drawn to L-Acoustics, or one of the many reasons, is that HF extension. But I need to be very specific in that, nowadays every PA has HF extension, in my opinion, to their detriment, in the sense that through manipulation, through a lot of forcing the fact, we've got this really non-musical, super hyped, very much process sounding high end. So much so that a lot of people now, that's become synonymous to them with good audio, with what HF should be. And I don't find that to be the case at all. And I've always felt, ever since VDOS, that the thing that Christian, that you guys do so well, there is that extension of the HF, but it's not harsh and it's not mechanical and it's not processed. And I have a systems engineer who is convinced that I just don't like the sound of 11, 12, and 13K. And I'm like, no, I love that sound. That's air. What I don't like is what we've come to become accustomed to and hearing that in both cheaper microphone designs and in PA designs. So when I will tune a PA, I have a target curve and it's based off of L-Acoustics and it's pretty linear. I mean, it goes way out there, but the way that an L-Acoustics PA sounds with that HF extension and every other PA, it's not the same. In fact, other systems I don't allow to go that far out because it's just too processed, it's too over the top. So I know what you're talking about, Jerry, with trying to achieve that openness in that air, yet it not sound fake and processed. And when I finally put these ears in just a few weeks ago, I was thinking to myself, I was like, the cheapest trick, the biggest like get out of jail free card for doing this would be to have some ears that have tons of low end, like people think of with a PA, hyped low end and hyped high end, and everyone goes, oh wow, listen to this smiley face. And that would have been the easy thing to do. That is not at all what I heard when I put them on. And I mean that with all my heart. I heard that extension in the high end, but I didn't hear the shrill artifacts that often come with it. In the low end, which again, it's this one of the things I love the most about L-Acoustics products, how smooth the transition from bass guitar, into the subs, that critical zone there where the music stays connected. L-Acoustics has always done that so well in such a musical, it's an overused phrase coming out of my mouth with this, but a very musical way. And I heard it in the ears too. So it really was like mission accomplished is what I'm saying. All these things. It's so great to hear you guys reference these things, because those were the points of curiosity with me too. Is like, how in the world are they going to do this? Yeah.
And
So
I'm gonna.
the kudos go to Jerry for that in that respect. I mean, the kudos come to us in terms of specification, but they did the job.
right.
Well, Christoph was very good in explaining and showing me what he wanted. So we have to give Christoph a lot of credit also, because he was the sounding board. We bounced back and forth quite a bit before you got any of the products, and he kind of steered me the direction that he wanted it to go. So he had a lot of input into it. I just was, trying to make it fit the objective that he had laid down.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we feel at ease to have to specify our calibrated, let's say, calibrated frequency response and calibrated coverage responses in our world of loudspeaker systems. But we were more in the unknown in this situation, because we didn't know if what we were specifying could be executed or would be just a fancy thing that we would never get. Uh, so that's what I said. Thank you to you. But I understand that we were very, very demanding on what to expect, because we just wanted to have the same thing. We just wanted to feel comfortable and feel the same than if we were in front of a large PA system. That was the goal.
Yeah, I mean, it was very awesome relationship back and forth. Like I said, there was equal. I tuned it, but there was equal feedback back and forth, and it was a learning experience, and I was pretty proud of what we came up with, Christoph included. And then I also think that with your influence and my guys in the 3D labs influence on the way that the product looks, I think that the product looks really cool. It's not only does it sound great, but I think it is very aesthetically pleasing, and it has a nice, like I said, I think both flavors from both camps kind of are wrapped into one with the way that that product looks.
Yeah, that's true. And I remember that I have challenged you on the logo, on the angle of the logo, on the monitor, because I think what I have is still, yeah, that's still a prototype. That is still the prototype that I kept with me, actually, because I wanted the logo to be tilted slightly to align with the shape of the oval, of the smooth oval form. So yes, we have been quite difficult as well. So I understand that in terms of design as well, there's been a lot of work accomplished. And and I'm taking that. I'd like my fancy now is to take that into another sector, into the trade sector, and into the let's say listening for music lovers and I would like to bring that, but it has to be at this price point for a non-professional. It has to be like a treasury piece of art, or like a jewel. So it has to be a
Yes.
jewel for man or woman, because it's a beautiful piece, and people have to be proud of having that, of wearing that. So that's also but that's a new challenge. The new challenge is to bring that into another sector.
Yes, exactly. To broaden the spectrum.
I know I have some people in my world that are, just audio enthusiasts, aren't engineers, that are good friends of mine, that immediately reached out to me when this product came out, kind of like, what's going on here, So I see that trend happening as well too. I also think you guys are going to be pleasantly surprised when our industry is able to get back on its feet, Right now there's the L-Acoustics and JH have joined forces, check out this cool product, but there's going to come a time when the new 21-year-old female pop star is sitting with her monitor engineer at the console. She doesn't know anything about JH or L-Acoustics, but she's presented with this new product and she's going to choose it. I really do feel that. And then it's
Yep.
going to take off in a whole other, direction that clearly you had thought about, but I really, as good as it sounds, I see that happening too. That's just my guess though.
Well,
So it's
that's why
exciting.
we've also made it in a custom product,
Mhm,
universal and custom, and we've had pretty good acceptance into the custom side of it as well.
mhm,
I
mhm.
think I think that the two companies have created a really good product, and I think that, like I said, for me, it was a pleasure working with Christian because I've always admired him, and I thought it was a really good story of us working together and putting this product out.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good story, but also a good beginning.
Thank you both so much. And again, I'm coming full circle to how I started this thing. Thank you both for your contribution to this industry, contributions, which are endless, and truly unparalleled. I really do believe that. Thank you for your contributions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
And
and, and
Chris,
thank you specifically for this collaboration here too. And during this time, during this really rough time for so many folks. I mean, it's a really cool thing to see come to fruition. So just thank you guys very much. Thanks for your time. Thank you for your
thank you
output.
very much. And Chris, I just want to say also a big thank you to you. You are one of our ambassadors for these in-ear monitors. We're very proud of that. Uh, I must imagine that during this time, that's also quite difficult for you to stay home or to do other activities. It's a challenge. We are all suffering a lot of this pandemic, and when I see that all what you do and what you do is to provide joy and happiness to people, and we are all stuck in our offices trying to
Mhm.
find kind of activity. And so for us as a manufacturer, it's maybe a little bit easier because we are not we feel we don't feel alone. We are operating with different